Good afternoon. It's Tuesday, April 19th, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. The security establishment is gearing up for a possible escalation in terror attacks following yesterday's bus bombing in the capital, which 21 people were injured, too seriously. With the Passover holiday approaching, security forces today beefed up their presence across the country, focusing on bus and hitchhiking stations, shopping malls, and markets. Roadblocks were set up at the entrance to a number of cities, and police called on the public to remain vigilant. Last night's attack sparked memories from days of terror from the past. In Jerusalem, residents expressed fear that bus bombings could return to the capital. Today's newspaper headlines declared terror returns to Jerusalem. People were cautious as they boarded buses, security guards were vigilant, and mounted police were out.
It was more explosions before in Jerusalem, and it has been less the last years, and I think it's bad that it's happening again, and it makes me more reserved.
After years of relative quiet without suicide bombings, the blast on bus number 12 was a fearful reminder of an era everyone wants to forget.
This morning, like everybody else in Jerusalem, I'm afraid. The buses aren't safe again. There's a problem, but I think this is common to me and to my Arab neighbors as well. We're all afraid, and hopefully the things will be better. We shouldn't give extremists on both sides opportunity to rule our lives, and we can't cave to terrorism on both sides. We try to build a common life of Jews and Arabs in this city.
The blast happened yesterday at 5:50 as the number 12 bus made its way from the Talpiot neighborhood to the city center. The bombing also ignited a second bus nearby.
What we have confirmed until now is there was an explosive device that went off and caused that explosion, and 21 people to be injured on the two buses that were next to each other at the time. Heightened security is continuing in and around in Jerusalem, and we're still continuing an investigation.
There was no immediate claim of responsibility from any Palestinian faction for the blast, and Israeli officials have declined to assign direct blame. The identity of one of the injured, a 30-year-old male, is still unknown, and security officials are seeking to determine if he is the terrorist who was involved in yesterday's attack or a civilian who sat near the bomb. Shortly after last night's bus bombing, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed that Israel will track down and punish those responsible. Netanyahu said Israel was in a constant battle against terrorism of all kinds, including stabbings, shootings, missile attacks, and terrorist smuggling tunnels, a constant war which Israel will eventually win. He went on to praise yesterday's discovery of a Hamas tunnel, hailing it as a great achievement in the country's efforts to locate tunnels and fight terror. Reacting to the Jerusalem bus bombing, Tourism Minister Yariv Levin told IBA's Margot Dudkevich that it's time the Palestinians change their attitude instead of inciting to violence.
Fortunately, terror is not a problem of Israel only, but of course we are fighting for the mere existence of the State of Israel, I think from the day one that the state was established. I think that the Palestinians should know that in terror they won't achieve anything. I think that we have to continue working with our security forces in order to try and prevent those attacks. I think that what is needed today more than ever is a change of attitude in the Palestinian Authority. I think that instead of educating the young generation to hatred, to extermination of Israel, to encourage suicide bombing, to make those who do that as heroes and call on the names streets and schools and things like that. I think that they have to change it completely if they'll try and start to educate their people to peace, to really accept the fact that Israel is here and will stay here forever, then there will be a chance to do something and to do some kind of progress towards peace.
Weeks following the Hebron shooting incident, the identity of the soldier involved has been released. Elor Azariah is the IDF soldier indicted for shooting and killing a subdued Palestinian terrorist in Tel Rameda outside of Hebron. The 20-year-old resident of Ramleh was officially charged with manslaughter yesterday. According to his indictment, Azariah acted in contradiction with the rules of engagement and without operational justification. His trial is due to begin on the 9th of May. Until then, he will remain in open detention at a military base, but will be allowed to celebrate Passover with his family. Despite much public debate, Azariah's parents are going ahead with plans to hold a solidarity rally for their son tonight at Tel Aviv's Rabin Square. Speaking shortly after the indictment, the soldier's father, Charlie Azariah, called on the public to come out in full force to support his son and all the other IDF soldiers. He stressed it was not a political event, but was intended to defend the soldiers who defend the state of Israel. Several artists slated to perform at tonight's event pulled out, while rapper Subliminal and singer Moshik Afia have so far remained on the bill. Both singers said they received threats and were under pressure to cancel their participation. The army has not ruled out the possibility that additional Hamas tunnels exist. This, according to a senior IDF officer of the Southern Command, who said security forces are using all the technological and engineering means at its disposal to determine whether more subterranean passages have penetrated Israel from Gaza. Yesterday, the Army released footage of the 30-meter deep, 2-kilometer-long tunnel recently uncovered by soldiers operating along the Gaza border. The tunnel penetrated several hundred meters into Israel, not far from Kerem Shalom. Meanwhile, unconfirmed reports are circulating that a private firm hired by Israeli residents living in close proximity to the Gaza Strip may have discovered a second attack tunnel after uncovering a hollow underground shaft. A fiery exchange this morning at the Ofer military court as the terrorist who attacked Israeli security officer Tzvika Cohen with an axe at the Malay Adumim Mall 2 months ago was brought in for trial. Relatives of Cohen, who was critically injured in the attack, demanded that the terrorist be given a death sentence or at least a life in prison. Saadi Ali Abu Hamad, the 21-year-old resident of Azariah, is charged with voluntary manslaughter as well as obstructing justice and carrying a knife. Hamad initially claimed that the motive was personal, alleging that the victim provoked the attack by insulting him, but shortly after changed his version and admitted to savagely attacking the guard for nationalistic reasons. The Jerusalem District Court today convicted Yosef Ben David, the 31-year-old Israeli man charged with the 2014 abduction and killing of Palestinian teenager Mohammed Abu Khader. Ben David is expected to receive a life sentence for the murder, which is believed to have helped trigger the 2014 Gaza war. The 16-year-old Abu Khader was kidnapped near his home in the East Jerusalem neighborhood of Shuafat and burned alive. Just 2 days after it turned out that 3 Israeli teens who were abducted several weeks earlier in the West Bank were killed by their Palestinian kidnappers. Judges rejected Ben Yosef's insanity plea, determining that he murdered Abu Khader for nationalistic motives and was well aware of his actions. His sentencing is scheduled for next month. The 2 accomplices who aided Ben David and were minors at the time of the attack were convicted of murder earlier this year. One was sentenced to life imprisonment and the other to a 21-year jail term. Shortly after today's conviction, the father of the Palestinian victim, Hussein Abu Khader, called on Israeli authorities to destroy the homes of the Jewish murderers in keeping with the policy of home demolitions for Palestinian terrorists. Also in the courtroom today, Yishai Schlissel, the ultra-Orthodox man who stabbed participants at the July Gay Pride Parade in Jerusalem, killing 16-year-old Shira Banki, was convicted of murder and 6 counts of attempted murder. In their ruling, judges at the Jerusalem District Court also criticized Israeli police for having previous knowledge of Schlissel and failing to stop him. Schlissel was known to authorities. He was previously imprisoned for 10 years for stabbing 3 people at the 2005 Jerusalem Gay Pride Parade. Just weeks after his release from jail, Schlissel managed to infiltrate last year's parade and carry out the stabbings. He was arrested on the scene during the rampage. His attack garnered strong condemnation from across the political spectrum, including senior Orthodox religious figures. Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong is in Israel for the first ever visit by the Singaporean head of state. Lee is leading a delegation of some 60 people, including 2 of his ministers. Prime Minister Netanyahu said it was an historic occasion. Lee, who is scheduled to also meet with Palestinian leaders in Ramallah tomorrow, expressed his concerns over lack of progress in Israeli-Palestinian peace efforts.
This is truly a historic occasion. I'm honored to be the first Israeli Prime Minister to welcome a Prime Minister of Singapore to our country. I think your arrival here reflects a coming of age of the relations between our two countries. There is a deep friendship between Israel and Singapore. We have so much in common.
We also watch carefully from a distance the Israel-Palestine problem and the Middle East peace process and the progress or lack of progress on these issues. We are concerned about the situation as many countries around the world are. We wish Israel well. We are friends with both Israel and Palestine. We hope that you will be able to resume negotiations and make progress towards a just and durable solution to a long-standing and complex conflict. And we hope to see a two-state solution with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security one day.
Israel's ambassador to the UN, Danon, engaged in a shouting match with his Palestinian counterpart, Riyad Mansour, during a fiery debate at the UN Security Council in New York. The exchange occurred shortly after yesterday's terror attack in Jerusalem. Danon accused the Palestinians of glorifying terrorism, and Mansour responded that Israel kills thousands of Palestinian children. Attending the session was the husband and daughter of Daphne Meir, who was stabbed to death by a terrorist outside her home in January.
Mr. President, it is time for real answers. It is time for the truth. Since no one else will ask the hard questions, I will. In the name of the people of Israel, in the name of the Israeli victims, and in the name of the family of Daphne Meir, let me ask the Palestinian representative here with us today, Mr. Mansour, will you condemn Palestinians who commit terror attacks against Israelis?
We condemn the killing of all innocent civilians, including Palestinian civilians. Do you do the same?
You're paying the families of the terrorists.
Do you do the same?
You're glorifying terrorism. Shame on you for doing that.
We don't.
Shame on you for glorifying terrorism.
Shame on you for killing thousands of Palestinian
for
children.
Not saying we.
Israelis and Palestinians need their leaders to elevate public discourse above mutual accusations and to engage in a constructive dialogue that can rebuild the trust that has all but evaporated. The Middle East Quartet is moving forward on a report that will review the situation on the ground, the threat to a two-state solution, and provide recommendations on how to advance peace.
In ongoing efforts to garner world support for the Palestinian cause and ahead of the UN Security Council meeting, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. The two discussed the need to relaunch Israeli-Palestinian peace efforts in a forum of an international summit. Abbas plans to raise a proposal calling on member states to condemn Israeli settlement construction at the UN Security Council later this week. On Thursday, Prime Minister Netanyahu is scheduled to meet with the Russian leader in Moscow. The ongoing Syrian conflict and the peace process are only some of the topics the two are expected to discuss. Jordan has announced that it has abandoned its plan to install security cameras on the Temple Mount. This despite an agreement reached with Israel last year under the auspices of the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. The decision was announced by Jordanian Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour, who said his country would always remain at the forefront of those defending Palestine, its people, and holy sites. However, it appears the Jordanian decision stemmed from the mounting pressure by the Palestinians, who warned that they would break the cameras if they were installed. Palestinians claimed the cameras would be used by Israel to identify and arrest Muslim worshippers. Turning to the U.S., and it's a crucial day in the American presidential campaign as New Yorkers go to the polls today to cast their votes for the Democratic and Republican nominations. Here to fill us in on all the details is IBA's political correspondent, Kalev Ben-David. Kalev, good to have you. New York has the largest Jewish community. How big is a role does the Jewish vote have there?
Well, certainly on the Democratic side, it plays a key role because so many of them are Democrats. And of course, relations with Israel always important for the Republicans. Let's take a look at a piece on the New York primary that I prepared earlier. Presidential nominations comes to New York today, and both Republican and Democratic candidates have been campaigning hard for the state's large Jewish vote.
It is such a blessing to be with so many friends. Good Shabbos.
With most New York Jews traditionally supporting the Democrat Party, Republican candidates such as Ohio Governor John Kasich have struggled to find the right tone in appealing to Jewish voters.
A great link between the blood that was put above the lamppost, the blood of the Lamb, is Jesus Christ is known as the Lamb of God.
Frontrunner Donald Trump, a native New Yorker, has seemed more comfortable with Jewish voters. In a meeting with Jewish journalists, maybe too comfortable.
Are you all supporters of AIPAC? Yes. Everybody in the room?
While Texas Senator Ted Cruz tried rolling matzah, it would take a Passover miracle for him to overcome Trump's big lead. But the real battle for New York Jewish voters is between Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. While Sanders is the first Jewish candidate in either party to win a primary, he has strongly criticized Israeli policy toward the Palestinians, while Clinton has defended strong American support for the Jewish state.
I can tell you right now, because I have been there with Israeli officials going back more than 25 years, that they do not seek this kind of attacks. They do not invite rockets raining down on their towns and villages.
Was their response disproportionate? I believe that it was. You have not answered that. There comes a time when, if we pursue justice and peace, we are going to have to say that Netanyahu is not right all of the time.
Sanders will need to do better than expected in New York in order to maintain a realistic chance of overtaking Clinton for the Democratic nomination. But if he manages to win an upset victory today, it is Israel's supporters in the U.S. who will really feel the burn.
So, Kalev, could the voting results in New York prove to be decisive for the rest of the U.S. presidential campaign?
If Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump scored decisive victories, maybe landslide victories today, that could seal the nomination for them going forward. But we'll know better tomorrow, Aryeh.
All right, Kalev, thanks a lot. Shock spread throughout Israel's entertainment industry upon hearing of the sudden death of renowned Israeli actress and film producer Ronit Alkabetz. The award-winning actress died today at the age of 51 after a prolonged battle with cancer. Alkabetz most recently starred in the title role of the 2014 marital court drama Get, which she co-directed with her brother Shlomi Amsalem. The film was nominated for a Golden Globe in the Best Foreign Language Film category and was also selected as the Israeli entry for Best Foreign Language Film at the 87th Academy Awards. Former President Shimon Peres called Alkabetz an extraordinary cultural ambassador of the State of Israel. Peres said that on various stages in the world, Alkabetz represented Israel with great pride, creativity, wisdom, and beauty. Stock talk now, and share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were up in late afternoon trading, and the shekel was mixed in foreign currency trading. Here are the numbers. Turning to the weather, and it will continue to be warm with heat wave conditions across the country, and the forecast is for strong easterly winds along the coast in the north. Here are the expected highs and lows at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. That brings us to the end of this edition of IBA News. Please join us again tomorrow for the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Ariel Sullivan wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.